Welcome in, college football fans. It's that time again. That's right. It's time for the first and long college football show. I am your co-host, Marcus. There's your other co-host, Mason. Mason, how are you doing on this fine sixth day of March here in 2024?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's my wife's birthday today. Shout out, happy birthday, babe. I know you're not gonna watch this, but I'll say it anyways. But no, it's been a good day. I just got in from Huntsville, Alabama, so I was over there. I'm not sure. I know they have a college there. I was trying to think of who it is, but in the land of the mountains there, anyways. Let's call them the Huntsville Mountaineers. But made it back home safely, driving through all the rain and the mess. If you're in Georgia, you understand. It's been a monsoon for seemingly a month now. But happy to talk some college football. I think we got a pretty good show lined up. Let me know or tell me a little bit about what we got for today.
We are going to be talking about the talk of the college football town, and that is the new proposal for a 14-team playoff. We're going to kind of dissect how we got here and kind of what the word on the street is as far as that goes. We're going to talk about some EA Sports College Football 25. I, Everybody seems to be talking about it. It's an old blast from the past for a lot of college football fans. If you're, I don't know, I'd say under 35 years old, you've played that game quite a few times and have enjoyed that game, and it's coming back out. And we got some news regarding that, and then we're going to continue our schedule look aheads. We're working our way through the SEC. We're almost done. Originally, we had talked about doing LSU. We're going to hold off on the LSU Tigers for tonight. We've got some special plans for that, a special guest possibly. So I hope everybody will tune in. I'm thinking maybe next week we'll be able to get that done. But tonight we're going to look at the Texas A&M Aggies, the Arkansas Razorbacks, and the Mizzou Tigers. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the show. We've had a great couple of weeks here on the show. We've had a great couple of shows the last couple of weeks. Plenty of news to talk about, even though it's March. And here we go, Mason. We've started off some spring practices, and we're going to kind of go through some teams as we preview those schedules. Let's jump into this thing, man. We've got some we've got some movers and shakers that are moving and shaking. I guess really what the question is at this point, everybody's heard the story of what's going on, but are the Big 12 and the SEC conferences abusing their power, or is their eye on a larger prize, Mason? If you haven't heard, which of course you have if you're watching the show because you're a real college football fan, you're a real one. The college football powers that be are trying to expand to a 14-team playoff, and this, I think, is a big deal in the sense that we haven't even seen the 12-team yet. Where we've yet to even see the 12-team playoff play out in one season, and here we are already trying to change this thing up. I wanted to kind of I had a quote that I wanted to put up on the screen for you guys, if I can find it here, and it was actually I'm gonna have to look it up, so I'll pull it up here in just a second. The Big Ten and the SEC champs in this new format would get an automatic first round bye, and I think that's where the biggest beef lies with this proposal. Basically, just no matter what, the SEC champ and the Big Ten champs getting a first round bye. We're going to discuss whether that's a good thing or bad thing for college football. The proposal states that 3 SEC teams, 3 Big Ten teams, 2 ACC teams, 2 Big 12, 1 non-Power 4 team, and then 3 at-large teams would be put into the playoff based on a college football playoff ranking, just like we did with the 14 playoff. So with all this being said, and I'm gonna pull up some of our quotes and some of our graphics here that we've got, but I just wanted to kind of get your initial thoughts on this. And are you excited for a 14 team playoff, or is this too much too fast?
When the 12-team playoff was originally pitched, I was in favor of it going to a 6-team. I wasn't ready to jump from 4 to 12. 8 made a little bit of sense, but why are we going from 12 to 14? How, like, I don't understand how this is any better. How is this more inclusive, right? Two extra teams is not going to make a difference. Also, it really doesn't make sense from a bracketing perspective. If you're going to go from 12 to anything, I think it should be from 12 to 16. So that way nobody gets a bye the first week. Like, I don't really like the built-in buys. I really don't. I understand that there's an advantage in some ways, but I think once you make it to the playoff, it should start over. And seeding should matter, but it shouldn't matter to the point of a team getting a bye or not. If we're gonna open this thing wide up, why not go from 12 to either 16 or from 12 to 24? Something a little bit bigger if we're gonna open this up and we're just gonna commercialize college football like it seems we're looking to do. Now, as far as the Big Ten and the SEC having a seat at the table, if any conference can kind of push their weight around, it's going to be the SEC and the Big Ten. Nobody's denying that. I understand where they're coming from and saying we don't want a 9-3 SEC champion to not have a bye in the first round and an ACC champion who's undefeated have a bye in the first round, right? We just saw a circumstance where a team, from the SEC lost a game and the ACC undefeated team did not get in, right? There's a reason for that, because I think on the field, if that game were to play, now I don't agree with Florida State not getting chosen for the 14 playoff, but if you're looking at it from on the field performance, Alabama would have crushed Florida State this past year, right? Nobody's denying that. So I understand the SEC's argument and the Big Ten's argument and saying, hey, look, we're the big boys. We deserve that bye. We deserve to go further into the playoffs automatically, and we deserve to have the most teams in. It seems odd to me that we went from in the 12-team playoff, there was so much debate going on about, the automatic I forget what it was called, automatic qualifiers, or the teams who won their conference having an automatic bid to the playoffs, right? The SEC was like, no, we don't want that. We just picked the top 12 teams, right? And now it's like the complete opposite, where the SEC is saying we want, automatic bids in, but we want more than just one. We want three, actually, and it should be, we should segregate the conferences and give, automatic bids to all these different conferences. There's a lot going on with that. And I think that we're getting away from the top teams getting in and getting into really murky territory. And I think we're overcomplicating things at this point.
Well, we came out with a video, I guess it was last week or a couple of weeks ago, and it was talking about the SEC and the Big Ten's dominance, and will they use their power for the good of college football? And it was kind of a question. It was an open-ended question, and I think we're starting to get an answer. And unfortunately, in my eyes, I see it as they're not looking out for the best interest of at least me, the college football fan. I understand what the SEC and the Big Ten are doing. It's about the money, baby. It's about the bag. And I understand this is a business after all. But whenever I said earlier this is too much too fast, I firmly believe that. We've got to see what the flaws are with this 12-team playoff. Who's to say that 9, 10, 11, and 12 would have ever won a national championship?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that. I haven't seen it happen. I have to see it happen before I know it can. And here we are adding more teams. Now, beyond that, you kind of look back at Greg Sankey, and I really, between Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey, I feel like Petitti is kind of riding the coattails of the SEC commissioner, and rightfully so. A guy that has had mad success as a commissioner of a power league here, and now we're seeing them kind of bully their way around the conference room table. And is it best for college football? Not, as I just said, not for me as a fan. I don't get any of the money. I don't get any of the TV deal money. I want good college football games, and I want the four. As much as we were saying how the SEC and the Big Ten were the dominant conferences, they are. They are the better teams. Everybody can argue all they want to. Um, the SEC and the Big Ten win the majority of the national championships. I mean, it is what it is. But I don't want a college football wherein we have just two conferences and we act like the Big 12, and the ACC just don't exist. That's not what I want. I don't think that's what's best for the sport. Now, let's read one of the quotes here. The ESPN, I guess, had caught Mike Gundy and were able to interview him, and I thought he said it perfectly. Quote, a playoff format that guarantees a first-round bye to any team, division, or conference before the season starts is unheard of in any sport as far as I'm aware, Gundy told ESPN. Based on the premise proposed, a team could be undefeated and ranked number one in the country and still not receive a first-round bye because teams were awarded one before the season ever began. We need to let the teams decide it on the field and reward those who are most deserving. I could not agree more with the mullet himself, Mason. I could not agree with we don't need to sit here. If the SEC is so much better, why would the SEC need a leg up on everyone else? I don't, this has gotten control. And I'm wondering if it's more of just a negotiating tool for Greg Sankey and Tony Fertitta. And then on the other hand of it, Mason, I'm starting to wonder, is there not about to be two power leagues like we talked about earlier in the offseason? Really, we were talking about it before the season even ended. Are we about to be in a world where these two power leagues say, all right, give us what we want, even if it's more than what you get, and if we don't get it, we'll blow up the whole game. We'll stop this kickball game, take our ball, and go home. Because back in 2020, when COVID was going on, Greg Sankey was the guy saying, we'll have our own national championship. We'll have our own. And then 2021, 2022, multiple quotes from Greg Sankey saying the SEC doesn't need more than 4 teams. We don't need it. This 14 playoff has been great to the SEC, and it has. So now we're at a point where you've got the SEC and the Big Ten saying, you know what, we'll just take our ball and go home. And so it's worrying me, Mason. It's got me a bit worried that I'm feeling like it might just be hunting season. Even for teams that maybe have just joined the Big 12, it could possibly be hunting season for Greg Sankey and Tony Fertitta to add more teams to these power conferences and really lay waste to the college football landscape. What's your thoughts on that, and where is this thing going?
Well, I think that's the other side of the coin. We can talk about how many teams should be at a playoff, with the Power Four as it stands, right? But at the end of the day, I think that there is an ulterior motive, which is that Greg Sankey and Tony Fertitta eventually they have a vision of eventually setting way to or setting the NCAA aside and saying, we have our own conferences to worry about. We do it best, in their minds, we do it best. We have a more elite conference, and we can go start our own conference on the side, and we can have the AFC and the NFC, and we can start our own little mini NFL, and I don't like that. I don't think that is what is best for college football. I'm a pretty progressive person in some ways. I don't like this at all. I think that it's a terrible move. College football has always been built on, I don't want to say being inclusive, right? Because if you look in terms of playoffs, it's not always been inclusive. There are blue bloods. That term resonates with college football fans for a reason, because there have been some traditional powerhouse programs that seem to win year in and year out, or at least be in the playoffs year in and year out. So from that sense, it's not inclusive, but fans of these teams have come to enjoy rivalries and enjoy games, individual games themselves, unlike any other sport, right? The playoffs have never mattered as much in college football as they have in other sports, even college basketball, right? March Madness, and this is always brought up when we talk about expanding the playoffs, but March Madness doesn't necessarily help NCAA basketball, right? From a regular season standpoint.
Yeah.
There are teams who play pretty good college basketball that I don't even know the name of because they're not in the NCAA tournament, right? Um, that's a problem. And the same thing is going to happen in college football. It's already starting to happen. But to me, I worry about the regular season. Um, for college football, I worry about attendance at these games, and I worry about the experience for the fans, mostly. And I think that we can just about give up on the fan experience. I think it's all about the TV entertainment aspect and the dollars that the schools can bring in at this point, unfortunately.
And that's what it's all about, man. It's about the dollar, the almighty dollar. And hey, I get it. The money rules the world, but I heard another talking head talking about this topic a day or so ago, and I thought he had a really good point. There is a large number of college football fans that are just casuals, and you don't get 28 million people tuned into the Iron Bowl that are all just diehards. They're everybody. Don't take the viewership for granted in the sport. Last season was the most watched college football season, regular season of all time. No, people tuned in more last year than ever before. The sport is healthy. And yet we go and play operation and see what kind of wishbone we can pull out without, the whole body falling apart. I mean, we're playing Jenga, Mason, and we're just going right to the bottom. We're not fixing any of the easy stuff. And here's the thing I think that has kind of led to this. We talked about Greg Sankey's kind of route in which he's taken. His thought process has changed on this situation over and over the last few years. And well, I say over and over. As things have progressed or regressed, he's kind of changed his tune, and he was not for all this expansion. And now all of a sudden it's like I feel like the SEC and the Big Ten are at a point where it's like, okay, we have to do something before things get out of our hands. Nobody's stepping up to be commissioner. Nobody's going to step up to run. Who could do it? Who could don the power of college football on someone to run it? I mean, who would even approve something like that? It's the conferences that are running things right now. And I think you've got two guys that are saying, we have an awesome amount of power and we've got to wield it responsibly for the best of college football and whatever we think that is. And Greg Sankey, I think, may have decided at this point that the best thing for college football is for him representing the SEC and Tony Fertitta representing the Big Ten to take over and say, all right, we're gonna add some structure to this thing. Come on over here, teams. We're gonna have billion-dollar contracts, and everybody left behind is just gonna be exactly that, left behind.
Yep. I completely agree. I'm ready to change the topic. Let's get on something a little bit more positive. Because I don't know I don't know anybody who in their right mind that isn't financially benefiting from this move who is talking glowingly about this idea of the SEC and the Big Ten separating from college football and from the NCAA. I don't know of anybody who's really excited for that or expanding even more. I think 12 is more than enough to find and to declare a true champion. Maybe not if you're giving if you go to 14 and you're giving two of the conferences a bye every year. Maybe then you can say that it's unfair and you're not actually getting the true national championship. Again, I want what is going to be the most competitive on the field. I don't think that getting a first round bye is gonna result in that.
No, and it's just a built-in excuse for every other conference other than the Power Two to say, "Hey, look, you have to prop those two power conferences up to even get them to where they want to go." And we all know that's not true. The SEC and the Big Ten have won multiple national championships over the last 20 years, or however, really whatever kind of timescape you really want to look at it, going back to the 90s. But you know, we, like I said, we had a video last week talking about the Big 12 and the ACC. The ACC has had a lot better luck putting teams in the national championship game and winning it than the Big 12 has. The Big 12, their last national championship was 2005 Texas. Before that, 2000 Oklahoma Sooners. And other than that, those are the only two since 2005, or excuse me, since 2000 that have reached a national championship game and won it. And only a one or two more have even reached and then lost, like TCU did to Georgia a couple years ago. So I feel like this is the SEC saying, "All right, little brother, we got to create some distance." And I don't know why the SEC feels as though it would need to distance itself unless it was creating a top shelf and a second shelf and decided that it wanted to pull some teams from that second rung up to the top rung. Namely, from the ACC, Florida State, Miami, Clemson. From the Big 12, I think maybe even Utah. There's some other teams in the Big 12 that I think could be cherry picked right out of their conference and brought up to the big leagues with the big boys. And honestly, I think that's the only way that a two super league conference or two super conference league is going to work. We're going to have to pick up every piece of decent football team we can from the ACC and the Big 12, bring them along, and then I guess the rest of those teams are going to be left behind. It's funny. You and I talked about relegation a few weeks ago. I think we're about to get it.
Yeah.
We're basically about to get it, except it's not going to be done on win-loss record. It's going to be done based upon whether your fan base was rabid enough or not. Like, do you sell enough TV products for a big conference to come in and pick you up? And I think that's where we're at right now. I mean, and it's, I think, a little bit unfortunate. Look, this college football season is going to be amazing. Okay, this is going to be a great season. The 12-team playoff is going to be great this year. I have no doubt in that. So this isn't like immediately take all the air out of the tires. This is a problem that we're going to have to worry about 2026 and beyond. And we obviously have no control, Mason.
Well,
as a college football fan, we don't have any control over this situation, and it's any complaints seem to fall on deaf ears.
yeah. Well, write your local commissioner, right? That's my advice to you. Mark and I'll figure it out, and then we'll pitch this video up to Greg Sankey, and
he watches.
Hopefully he'll find the answer there.
Yep. He watches. Don't you worry about that. Hey, and everybody who's watching right now, thank you so much for watching. We are so glad that you're tuned in to the First and Long College Football Show. We do this every single Wednesday, talk college football, all the hot button issues and current events. And we're so glad that you're here. We want you to drop a comment in the comment section. We'd love to read it live on the show. If you're not subscribed, we really hope that you would consider doing that. That helps the channel out so much. We'd be forever indebted to you. Thank you again for tuning in. Let's talk about something a little happier, shall we? Are you excited about the EA Sports College Football 25, Mason? Is this something that excites you?
Absolutely. I'm not much of a gamer nowadays at 32. I don't tend to have as much time as I used to play video games, but especially now that we have this show, right? I'm super interested to play this game because now it's twofold, right? I get to play a video game, which I still enjoy doing. I just don't have as much time as I used to, right? I'm still a big kid, like at heart, right? And I get to learn more about these players that I talk about on a daily basis and these teams. So I'm super excited for it. I don't know what information you have on it, but I think that my understanding is that everything's been kind of under the radar for the most part on this game, which adds to the intrigue, right? but I'm anxious to hear kind of what you know about the game. Obviously, we've all heard at this point that Arch Manning is not as excited for this game, and he's not going to participate. What are your thoughts on that, and what else do you know about the game so far?
Don't know a ton about the game yet. As you said, it's been pretty close-lipped on the whole, details of the game. We haven't seen any gameplay yet, and I assume that will be dropping at some point, some kind of teaser.
Yeah, they're saying May for the gameplay trailer.
Okay, so we're just a little bit away from that. I'm a huge fan. As I said at the top of the show, NCAA football. I mean, nothing was better than grinding out, career mode on either as a coach or as a player on NCAA. I guess it was 14 was the last one that came out. Just kind of talking about the Arch Manning thing and players opting in. As everybody knows, each player gets $600 and a copy of the game if they opt in. And Arch Manning has decided not to, while over 10,000 college football athletes have accepted the $600 and the copy of the game as payment to be able to use their name, image, and likeness in the game. So I think that added up to like 85% of all the players have opted in so far. So I think that's huge. That's a big deal. EA Sports said we've hit I think it was 88% of their goal. I think so. That's great. We're going to get to see all of our favorite college football players. I'm interested to see who's going to be on the cover. Who do you think deserves to be on the cover for College Football 25? Because I mean, it's kind of like I've been hearing Nick Saban.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard, which I'm not. Why would we have a coach on the front of the game?
I think if you're gonna
gone.
put out and I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they do Madden. I don't remember how they used to do college football or NCAA, 2014. But to me, if you're gonna have 25, right? College football 25, it should be a player who's going to play in 2025. So I don't think that Caleb Williams qualifies. I don't think Nick Saban qualifies, as a coach. And I feel like it should be a Heisman hopeful for this next year, or they should just put whoever won the Heisman the year before on, right? Like that, to me, that kind of makes a lot of sense. Because it's so hard to predict who's going to win the Heisman. Like nobody was really picking Jaden Daniels last year to win the Heisman, right?
No, LSU fans weren't even picking.
No, so I don't know. It's interesting. But I would rather them just say we're just going to go with whoever won the Heisman the year before, just to make it cut and dry. Like we know going into the season who's going to be on the cover. I don't necessarily think that they're going to do that. I think that they're going to probably. Gosh, I don't know. I don't know if you put Colorado, and that's the thing. You got Travis Hunter, you got Shedeur Sanders. I just don't know if you put Colorado on the front as a brand. That's the issue. If they played for Texas, it'd probably be on. Quinn Ewers could make it, and he may not even be the starting quarterback by the end of the year.
Why do I have a funny feeling Quinn Ewers is going to be on the cover? I just really feel like that. I got a feeling. And I like Quinn Ewers. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I like him. I don't think he's like the best quarterback in the country or anything, but I think he's on up there. But it's not going to take long for that old story to wear out on SEC other fan bases. Texas is going to wear on SEC fan bases like that, dude. Everybody's going to be so annoyed. And nothing against the Texas Longhorns. I ain't got nothing against them. But everybody's going to be so tired of the Texas Longhorns by the end of this season, man. Their fans are crazy. They're just an awesome fan base. You're going to start seeing that Texas Longhorn logo all over everything like you did back in the early 2000s. Mason, I remember going to the beach as a youngin', right, and seeing, you go to the beach, you see people from all over the country, and especially down here in the Southeast, a lot of people go to Panama City Beach. And I used to see that Texas Longhorn on the back of all the jacked up trucks, and PCB. And I'm like, damn, Texas Longhorns, they're fresh off a national championship, Like, God, they're so badass. I wish Georgia could do that. We're going to be, if Quinn Ewers is on the front of that bad boy, dude, Texas fans are going to be absolutely insufferable. I could totally see it, though. Travis Hunter, I think, would be a good one, personally. Because Colorado, it's not, it's like Colorado is the weirdest mix. Like, you've got diehard fans watching every move, right? And then you've got all these casual fans that they've been a college football fan for 5 freaking minutes on the scale of, college football lifetime. So I feel like you kind of have like all the audiences captured there, and it's trendy. I think people might look back on it in 20 years and be like, what, Colorado, Travis Hunter, unless he's a Hall of Famer. But I just think that those are some pretty interesting picks there.
What if what if Arch Manning holds out and then EA comes to them and they're like, look, we'll put you on the cover, right? You got to be in this game. We'll put you on the cover. We'll give you a cover bonus of $5,000.
Yeah,
you got to be in this game, man.
I'm glad you brought this up. Well, here's the problem. Okay, here's part of the problem anyway. Arch Manning getting $5,000 is equivalent to you or I getting 5 cents.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem there. And we haven't heard that they've went and offered him money to do any of that or nothing like that. But I think the Manning family has done a really good job protecting Arch.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think they're worried about more than anything is the expectations getting way too high for Arch Manning at Texas. And I think the cat's already out of the bag in a sense. I mean, here we are talking about him. He hasn't done anything in college football yet, and here we are talking about him. But even in his recruitment, they did such a good job of protecting him from going to all the camps. I mean, just they've done a good job slowing down the hype train, I feel like. And I think this is just another way, just a speed bump on the way to calming everybody down. Let's don't put the cart before the horse, because I don't think they want him to be labeled as a big-time bust in football. And I think you mitigate some of those risks, I guess, whenever you don't put this out there. It's not like everybody's not going to go make their own Arch Manning and the creative player.
That's something that I found out today. You're not going to be able to. The system will literally block you from putting his name into into the the creative player. Now you can create a number 16 that plays for Texas and call him March Anning, or something. Yeah. Bend over was a common one back in the day. But
I had a whole team of bend overs.
Yeah. It was just the offensive lineman for me. But but there are some things in this game that I did learn about today that I kind of want to cover. But I just real quick on the Arch Manning thing. I think that it's really sad that he's not going to opt in. The excuse that came out of his camp was that he's focused on football. Right. We're not focused on being in a video game. We're focused on being good in real life. And it's like, okay, but by you opting out, you've created more attention to yourself off the field that will take your attention away from on the field than if you would have just opted in like everybody else. So I don't buy that excuse at all. I think that's a pretty sad excuse. What I think really happened is Arch Manning's camp said, well, we don't want him to be put into this video game with like a 72 rating, and Quinn Ewers is going to be an 88. Like, that doesn't look good for us either. So,
oh man, that's so lame though, dude.
I think that's what it is, because I think that
I think you're probably right.
I think that they're protecting their little child, their little prodigy child, and I say that it sounds like I'm talking shit on Arch Manning.
You hate Arch Manning, bro.
I was really excited to see him come to Georgia, but and I think he's going to be a great player.
But he didn't, so now he can go to hell. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think you're right. I think you probably nailed it, and that's kind of what I'm saying. I don't. It'd be something that people, if he did come out as a 74, and how would you even rate the guy? We don't know what he's rated. Nobody does. He's a backup, and how do you know where he would be rated on the scale versus other quarterbacks, we do not know, dude. We have
Yeah.
not seen this kid play in high school football. We don't know. We don't know where he's at competitively, and so yeah, I think this was a way to keep things under wraps, and I think they were trying to mitigate people talking about Arch Manning a little bit, just kind of pumping the brakes on everything, and it's not working. It's not working because he's
Yeah.
the topic of one of our shows for not being on opted into the game. So I think it definitely did the opposite of what they were trying to do there. Cannot wait to play the game. I
Yeah.
want to get the game, and I'm gonna have to go buy a PS5. I don't have a PS5. I got a PS4. So I'm
It'll
gonna
come
have
out
to
on
go.
4.
Will it?
Yeah, yeah, they're
Okay.
still making games on PS4 too. I haven't, that's not confirmed. I'm pretty sure it's going to come out on the 4 though, because pretty much every game they make for PS5 now is also in a PS4 still. So
Okay, good news. Good news
yeah,
on that front. So I'll be playing it, and what I'd like to do is just have some simulations. I want to download some of these rosters and make sure that they're accurate, and then play some simulation games, and maybe we'll even get together and watch some of them here on the channel. I think that would be really fun
yeah,
to have some people come come tune in, and maybe we'll preview some games as we're going through our weekly show, and watch a simulated game of a game that's about to happen in a few days. I feel like that'd be fun as hell, man.
yeah. Put some bets on it. Start like a bet online type of deal, but just for
Yeah,
simulation games, and have our viewers kind of bet, with us or against us, and
yeah.
we'll just start a bookie business really,
And we'll
and
commentate the game. We'll turn the commentators off, and we'll just commentate. Give
yeah.
that man some butter. He's on a roll. Uh, yeah, we can have some fun with that shit. I'm
Yeah,
super
and then
excited.
before you know it, we've got our own offshore, betting account,
Yeah,
we become bookies,
yeah,
and that's how we get our start.
yeah. You could actually bet on this game at mybookie.ag.
It's funny. We were at my daughter Emery's spelling bee yesterday, and my brother, actually showed up, because he didn't have anything else going on, and we were talking about like putting bets down on the kids, in each grade, and so we were fake betting at the spelling bee at the elementary school. It was a good time, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually bet against my daughter and won. Believe it or not.
You're like, I know she has trouble with this word.
Yeah, I'm like,
Uh,
oh, this kid, he's got the best GPA in the class 3 years in a row. Yeah, I got this one in the bag.
yeah, sure. Uh, some of those kids definitely look really smart, and we'll just say that. That's the nicest way to put that. Um, they look super smart. Um, let's kind of go through some of our schedule look aheads. As I said in the top of the show, we're not going to do LSU. We've got somebody that we'd like to possibly collaborate with, and we're going to give him the opportunity to maybe come on next week and talk some LSU Tigers. So we hope that you're going to be here. I'm not going to reveal who that is yet. Just we need to kind of hem up some loose ends on that front and see if that's something that we're going to be able to do. But I've got some schedules and some over unders, and I've got just a not I wouldn't say a breakdown or anything, but we're going to go over just a few things for Texas A&M, Arkansas, and Mizzou as far as where their roster's at right now, who they're replacing. Just a couple little tidbits, and like I said, we're not going to go crazy. We're not going to spend an hour on each team or anything like that, but definitely want to get a good look at these teams before we go into spring practice, where we're really going to learn more about the depth and some of the newcomers that are coming to each of these teams. Again, thank you all so much for watching our live shows every week on Wednesday. We'd love for you to be here. I hope that you'll come back and visit us next Wednesday. If you ever do miss anything and you want to watch the clip version of this, the clips are released throughout the week, and it seems like that's been doing pretty good. Everybody enjoys that. So let's jump into this thing, man. Pull up some of these schedules. We're not doing LSU right now, so let me go over to the Texas A&M Aggies. Texas A&M is a very interesting team this year, Mason. Obviously, new head coach after Jimbo Fisher is shit canned, and it was obviously for the best. This team Texas A&M over the last few years has not had issues recruiting. That really has not been the issue. It's been on-field coaching that has really left something to be desired. And the Aggies ended up 5-7 last year. They're sitting at the number 2 in the transfer portal class for this past year. Brought in a ton of guys and had a ton of guys leave. The best way I could figure out to describe this roster at this moment is lots of questions and lots of possible answers. Okay. But we have to give these guys an opportunity to answer some of these questions. One thing that I feel pretty confident about is Connor Wegman's ability to run this offense. I like Connor Wegman. I like the tools in his tool bag. I think this kid has got what it takes. He's on the short list for the Heisman Trophy this year. And I think that he's got a really good I think he's got a really good shot. I really, really do. Just some questions for this team that I think are going to have to be answered. Running back, Reuben Owens. He's got to step up this year. Colin Klein has to have a good running game to be productive in his offense. I think we all saw that the last couple of years whenever he had Deuce Vaughn and then whenever he didn't, the difference in that offense. And obviously your offense is never going to be as good whenever you lose an NFL player. But in this situation, starting over with a fresh slate, installing a new offense at a new school, I think that you're going to need a good running back to be able to lean on. I think Reuben Owens has a chance to do that. There's kind of some complaints about his ability to pick up the pass protection, something that he's going to have to work on here in the spring. Defensive line, the interior defensive line, to be exact, is a big question after outgoing transfers. So who's going to step up there? Who's going to step up at wide receiver? Who just pulled in freshman Terry Bussey. And then I really like this guy, Cyrus Allen, that they got out of the transfer portal. He was a wide receiver from Louisiana Tech, had a great year last year, comes over, not a guy that a lot of people are talking about. Look for Cyrus Allen to be a surprise wide receiver in the SEC this season. And I feel really good about this team as secondary and linebacker. Bring back Chase Besantis on that offensive line, was a highly coveted guy, was in the transfer portal, got him to change his mind and stay at Texas A&M, and I think that was a big deal. So with all that being said, I don't think we have a ton of clarity with this Texas A&M team right now. Obviously, tons of moving pieces. Got a lot of stuff to figure out in the spring. I think this team is going to improve on their 5-7 record. We're going to go through the schedule here in just a second. The over/under is set at 8.5. So for a team that won 5 games last year, over/under at 8.5 is pretty solid. Do you want to take us through the schedule and kind of give us your thoughts on the Aggies and where we go from here?
Yeah, you look at an 8.5 over/under for this team with a brand new coach who, this team won 6 games last year, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought it was 5,
or maybe even 5. Yeah, because I don't think they went to a bowl game, right? So
no.
So 5 games last year and have really been on a downward trajectory for a while. And it's interesting, but it does make sense from a betting perspective because Mike Elko has a short history as a head coach, but a good history as a head coach. Good record at Duke. Took half the roster, if that, of what he has from a talent perspective of what he has at Texas A&M with what he had at Duke, and was actually pretty positive, right? Was a pretty good program. And then what's interesting about this is, he's walking into a good situation. He's probably going to make this team better. And lo and behold, week 1, he's going to go face his old quarterback, right? And so week 1, he's going to have kind of the upper hand here, I would think, knowing exactly, what his old quarterback used to do for Duke, right? And I'm blanking on the guy's name right now. Help me out here, Mark.
Who's that?
They're Notre Dame's new quarterback. Riley Leonard. Thank you. All right. So
Yeah.
I was just looking it up as I was talking there, but so Riley Leonard is known as a quarterback that has some flaws, right? Not a great passer, excellent on the ground, good leadership, and he seems to make a difference in his team when he's actually playing. Mike Elko knows all of his attributes. Guy played for him for 2 years. He kind of helped build Riley Leonard in a lot of ways, and so I think people are going to look at this and say, "Man, Notre Dame better win this," and all the pressure's on Notre Dame. I feel like Texas A&M has, not more pressure on them. I do agree that Notre Dame has more pressure to win that game, but I think that Texas A&M, in
Hey, I think you.
in my eyes, Texas A&M is going to be the team that you need to beat. Texas A&M is going to be the team that should be picked to win this game against Notre Dame. So to me, that's a really interesting game right there to kick the season off. How many times do we see this, though? It's like college football just understands its own drama in some ways. And we get these matchups, and it tends to be in week one for some reason. But I'm really excited about that game. That's a really interesting game to circle for week one for all of college football, but also for Texas A&M and for Notre Dame for multiple reasons. Then you keep on going through the schedule. I think that they'll win the next 3 games. They should win against Arkansas. Not saying that they can't drop one of those, right? But I think that they have a legitimate shot to go 5-0 to start the season. I'm not completely confident that Missouri can replicate what they did last year. So while I think on paper they're probably still a better team than Texas A&M, this is also going to be a home game for Texas A&M. It's going to be a ruckus environment for Missouri to step into, and I think it's a kind of prove it game for Missouri. Maybe they catch them on their heels, right? Maybe they're able to win that game. So potentially, right? I'm not predicting that they're going to be 6-0 at this point, but 6-0 potentially, 7-0 with Mississippi State, and then you got LSU, right? What are we going to get out of LSU's defense? We don't know. We know that they lost a couple of key wide receiver targets and also a Heisman winning quarterback on the offensive side of the football, as well as a really good offensive coordinator. I do think that they take a step back on offense. They're not going to be bad. I'm not saying that. I think Nussmeier is a great quarterback, and I think he's going to do really well. They still have Lacey. I think he's going to do really well, and they recruit that position very well. So that's, to me, I think some people would think that LSU should be picked to win that game, and they probably will, but I don't think the margin's going to be that great, especially at that point in the season if Texas A&M does kind of what I'm saying that they could potentially do. And if they're even 5-2 at this point, that's going to be less than a 10-point spread for that game. So I'm going to say that's maybe like a 40% chance of winning for Texas A&M. South Carolina should be a win. Auburn should be a win. I think that could be more competitive than most. And my point is, you get to Texas and you're at home. You're at Kyle Field for this game. It's a rivalry game. You got the horses to win this game. You got the dudes to win. They shouldn't win. I think Texas will be favored in this game, but they got the dudes to go out and win this game. And there's a real chance. I think there's a real opportunity here. In the beginning of March, we can speculate and say that Texas A&M has a real opportunity to not only make it to the playoffs and end up being like a 10-2 SEC team, they have a chance to play for the SEC championship next year in year one under Mike Elko. Of course, that would be amazing. But I think that given his pedigree and what he's been able to do at lesser schools with lesser talent, this should be an easy coaching. Like, this should be an easy team for him to coach. It's a tough schedule for him to coach as well, if that makes any sense. I feel like he's going to go in and realize he's got some real pieces to work with, but he's also going to be competing against some of the best in the country. This schedule is favorable, and am I just drawing too much out of this, Mark, or do you see where I'm going with this? Where like this could legitimately be a 10-win team pretty easily, right? Am I crazy for saying that?
At 8.5, I'm feeling right now the play would definitely be over. And part of the reason I feel that way is because of the way the home versus the away slate sets up. You've got that Arkansas game that's a neutral site, but if you look at this, you got 3 out of your 4 home games in September. 3 out of your 4 games in September are at home. Okay, and then you got the neutral site with Arkansas there in September, and then you got a couple of more home games there with Missouri and LSU, and then you finish the season up at home versus Texas. I think all of their really tough games come at home.
Mhm.
And I think that makes a big, big difference. The 12th man is an extremely raucous environment. There's no doubt about that. And I think that if we're saying that Texas A&M could more than likely finish with 9 wins, that crowd's going to be into it into the very last game of the year, man. So yeah, I think this sets up really well. Notre Dame that first week, I think you're going to be catching Notre Dame not knowing their identity. They're still trying to figure out how they're going to do anything in the passing game. All new wide receiver room, new quarterback. And Notre Dame also, not to mention, has lost a good bit of linemen. There was a great offensive line last year, kind of went under the radar. A lot of those guys are gone too. So Texas A&M, I think, has got a really good opportunity. I like this secondary a lot. Bring in Des Ricks over from Alabama. I think that's a nice piece to bring in. Bring in Scooby Williams at linebacker from Florida. I thought he was an outstanding linebacker on a Florida team that just absolutely sucked. So I think you bring in some really good players. Take a look back last year at what Duke did. Talk about doing more with less. Now, Duke, I think, had a lot better defensive line than what we're going to see at Texas A&M. I think it'll be a little bit different defense, but if you'll remember, that Duke secondary was really, really good last year. Really tough to throw on, and I think you're going to see more of that. It's no secret. Mike Elko is a defensive-minded head coach, and in my opinion, I think that's the best frame of mind to have as a head coach. And I think he's going to pick up a lot of those personality characteristics that we saw at Duke as a coach. If I'm mashing the over/under, I'm taking over right now on the Texas A&M Aggies. I think 9 is a very, very strong possibility. What you with me on that?
Yeah, 100%. If my breakdown wasn't clear enough, I would almost take over 9. I think 9.5 would be a stretch, but if I could get really good plus money on a over 9, I'd like those odds. And at least push. But I'm pretty confident that they can get to 9 wins next year.
Let's move it on over to the Arkansas Razorbacks. Arkansas is an interesting team to me. Coming off of a 5-7 year last year, I believe it was 5-7. They didn't make a bowl game. Arkansas has lost a lot of their identity, I feel like, from last year. Rocket Sanders is gone. KJ Jefferson gone. Both of them transfer out. Rocket Sanders going to be playing within the conference over in South Carolina. KJ Jefferson headed over to UCF. Best of luck to those guys over there. Now you've got Jacoby Criswell at quarterback left over from last year, and then you bring in a guy named Taylon Green over from Boise State. It looks to me, from everything I can read, which Arkansas just started spring practice. Some of these teams are already getting going on spring practice, which is just crazy. Arkansas is doing that early spring practice this year. They said they're going to try that out and see how it goes. It seems to me like Taylon Green is the favorite to get the QB1 reps in the spring, but this quarterback job is anywhere but doled out. It's going to be a competition, and so we'll have to kind of see how things go throughout the spring and fall. But I think the biggest news of this offense is the hire and kind of handing the reins over of this offense to Bobby Petrino. It seems like just yesterday he rode off into the sunset on his motorcycle in a neck brace, right? And here we are, and I feel like from everything I can gather, it feels like the Arkansas fans and talking heads are pretty happy about Bobby Petrino coming in and taking over the reins on offense. And I say taking the reins because last year at Texas A&M, you saw Bobby Petrino come in and he wasn't able to fully install his offense. Jimbo Fisher required him to use different terminology, got to do it this way to fit my system, blah, blah, blah. That's not happening in Arkansas. If you go back and you watch Sam Pittman's press conference from yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, either that or the day before, they asked him, is Bobby Petrino going to be able to run this offense? And he said, oh, I have handed the reins over completely. Bobby asked me if I wanted him to change anything. I told him, don't change a thing. So you're going to see Bobby come in here and do his thing. And, oh, by the way, this offensive wide receiver room, they're returning every single player from last year. So the wide receivers, from what Sam Pittman is saying, are fired up. They're ready to go play some football. Really excited about what this new system is going to bring to that wide receiver room, the energy that it's going to bring. If we can get Taylon Green out there slinging the rock around, I think this can be a somewhat decent offense. Obviously, you're going to have to replace one of the best players, in my opinion, one of the best running backs in college football, in Rocket Sanders, and that's going to be a task. But this team has 39 new players on it. Okay, this team had tons of turnover from last year. The defensive line and secondary looked to be pretty decent. If you look back at yards per game given up through the air last year, would you believe that Arkansas was ranked in the top 5 as far as giving up passing yards per game last year, and yards per game in general? This Arkansas defense did pretty well for the most part. Their problem was the offense could never get anything going. The other teams, the opponents' best offense was their best defense was their offense last year. In the fact that other teams' offenses got to run a ton of plays. And so it skewed a lot of the run game stats and things. This defense was better than it appeared on paper last year. And it returns a lot of those guys. Linebacker is where there is a massive question mark for this Arkansas Razorback team. And that's why you see a guy like Xavier Sorey, who was a high 4-star that was at the University of Georgia, 5 stars, I think, in some, even in some recruiting rankings.
There you go.
He comes over from Georgia, somebody who was kind of buried on the depth chart over there. They need Xavier Sorey to soar beyond all expectations this season if Arkansas wants to get back to a bowl game. The over-under set at 5.5. I think you can put that either if they get to 6 wins, it'll be because that linebacker core stepped up and some guys that you've never heard of stepped up for that team. So that's a big question mark for me. Quarterback and linebacker. Where are we at there? Excuse me. I trust Sam Pittman to have a good offensive line. This guy's an offensive line coach from way back. So I certainly expect the offensive line to be able to do their thing. Feel good, like I said, about the DL and the secondary. Just need those linebackers, to step up. You want to take us through this schedule and maybe give us some thought, what your thoughts are on the Arkansas Razorbacks?
Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, that first game is against
Pine Bluff.
Okay. I was
Arkansas
going
Pine
else.
Bluff.
Okay, it is an Arkansas school. I was going to say like Northeast Arkansas State Tech University. So, it's a team like that. But I do like that logo. That's pretty nice. It looks like my hair whenever it flows.
It looks like a tattoo that you get when you're 21 and then you turn 51 and you're like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, and it looks like just a splotch of mustard on your deltoid. So they should win that game. But the most interesting game here is the non-conference game in week 2 against Oklahoma State in September. I think that's a really good matchup. I think that's going to be a pretty competitive matchup. In other words, not necessarily good for Arkansas. I'm not going to say that they're a shoe-in to win that game necessarily, but that's going to be a very fun one to watch as a fan. If they win that game, I think that they get a little bit of momentum, beat UAB, and then you got Auburn. That's going to be probably a toss-up game. I would say that's a 50-50 game. Both of these teams, to me, right now are winning in the offseason, and they're trending up. So that's a really interesting game to watch to see kind of who is going to take over in that old SEC West, and who are the real playmakers or the players, I should say, in the SEC as we know it starting next season. Texas A&M game, a team that we just covered. That's a game that I think is going to be really tough for Arkansas. But if Bobby Petrino comes in and makes the difference that we assume he's going to make, and if the defense, like you mentioned, plays as good as they did last year, that's a winnable game, right, for Arkansas. I wouldn't. I'm not just going to say I have a lot of hope in Texas A&M, but I'm not just going to say that they're going to beat Arkansas without
That's
seeing them play on field.
That's always a great game, and that's played at Jerry World every year too.
Yeah, and I think that that's going to be just as fun of a game. I think Texas A&M should probably be favored just given the guys that they have, but that hasn't amounted to much in the past. Then you got Tennessee. It's going to be a really tough matchup. October 5th, they get a bye for the October 12th, and then October 19th, LSU. Those are going to be two really tough matchups back to back, and then they got another back to back with Ole Miss and Texas, again separated by a bye week. So, can you get two of those four, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be really tough. I think if you're an Arkansas fan, you say, "Hey, can we get one of those four?" Like, if you win any of those four, you feel pretty good about, the mid to later part of that season. Obviously, you hope that you're going to be able to bully Mississippi State around. You beat La Tech, and then Missouri. This has become a bit of a rivalry of sorts, and I'm excited to see kind of what this game looks like because I don't know that Missouri is going to hang around until the end of the year and be competitive. I don't know if we're headed towards another 10-win season for Missouri. So by the end of the year, maybe Arkansas is figuring some things out. Maybe you catch Missouri sleeping, and maybe that's one you can play upset and end the year on a high note. With an over-under at 5.5, and without going through the roster, which we'll do, I believe we'll probably hit Arkansas later on in the offseason. But without all that, I mean, at 5.5, I would venture. I'm pretty optimistic. I think that they can win 6. And win, half of these toss-up games. I think that 6 is doable. What do you think about that over/under, Mark?
I think it's spot on, Mason. I think
Yeah.
that they've got that half number right where it needs to be. Look, you have to win all the games that you're supposed to win. First of all, that's the biggest thing for Arkansas. Arkansas, Pine Bluff, UAB, Louisiana Tech. You got to win those ball games.
Mississippi State,
and then Mississippi State, you're going to play on the road. It's still a have to win game.
Yep.
You've got to win that football game if you're going to get anywhere close to this 5.5. So there's 4 wins, and I suspect they can win those 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the Auburn game. Auburn is going to be fired up. It's on the road. That stadium's going to be raucous. I actually think Auburn's kind of trending in the right direction right now. So I don't love that situation. It seems like Missouri beats the stew out of Arkansas every year. I don't know what the deal is with that. I know this is a rivalry game. It doesn't seem like Arkansas can ever figure out a way to beat those guys. Texas, obviously, I think is going to be a loss. Ole Miss, I think, is probably going to be a loss. LSU, we'll see what that defense looks like. That's going to go a long way in deciding. So, yeah, I think it's an uphill battle getting to that 6th win. I think if you're really going to point at a game on the schedule that you've got to win to get to that 6th win for a couple of different reasons is the Oklahoma State game. You're going to Oklahoma State, which is not too far away there. I think there's going to be some Arkansas fans in the house. I think if you want to get to that 6 wins, I think that Oklahoma State game is super pivotal because not only would you have that win under your belt, but that's early in the season. That's grabbing momentum early in the season, which is going to be a big deal before you get into that SEC slate. So maybe if you can win that Oklahoma State game and win that Texas A&M neutral site game, I think you got a pretty good shot of hitting that 6, honestly. So I think those are 2 games that are super important for the Arkansas Razorbacks this year. Let's moving on down the line to our last one here, and we just talked about them just a bit. Those Missouri Tigers. Mizzou is a team that has progressed over the last few years. Went from having no bowl, really no chance of going to bowl games, to all of a sudden last year with the 11-win season after the Cotton Bowl victory over the Ohio State Buckeyes. Obviously, momentum is on the side of the Missouri Tigers right now. Several guys have left to take off to the NFL, and some of the coaching staff has left as well. So left some empty spots there. Corey Batoon becomes the defensive coordinator. He was a guy that was a D coordinator for Kane Womack, who is now the defensive coordinator at Alabama over at South Alabama. So he's going to come in. Look, this is a guy that, he's got a little bit of SEC experience. He's worked on some SEC staffs over the years. So I think that's a big deal. South Alabama had a really good defense last year. Now, how much of that was Kane Womack and how much of that was Corey Batoon, we'll have to see. But filling Blake Baker's shoes, who left for LSU, is going to be a really big deal because Blake Baker did a really good job with this defense last year. But beyond that defense, you got Brady Cook coming back at quarterback. That's a huge deal, man. Anytime you have a returning quarterback, it's a big deal. But this is his fourth year playing, fourth year starting, I think. So I think you can expect that this should be the best year that Brady Cook's ever had. Not to mention you got guys like Luther Burden to throw the ball to. You return Kirby Moore as your offensive coordinator. And in today's college football, a team like Missouri to have as much success as they did last year and retain their offensive coordinator, I think that's huge. So I like the offense for this Missouri Tiger team. The defense is what I think we need to keep an eye on. Now, as far as the offensive line, you've got everybody from the center all the way out to the right tackle coming back, man. And then you pick up a transfer guy, Caden Green, who is an offensive tackle from Oklahoma, who played at Oklahoma. It played well. He's going to come in and more than likely play that left tackle or left guard spot. So really, you've only got one spot to figure out on the offensive line. So I think that's huge. You lose a really great running back, obviously, from last year, who was a walk-on and ended up being the best running back in the SEC last year. How are you gonna answer that bill? Marcus Carroll comes in from Georgia State. Nate Noel comes in from App State. Those are a couple of transfer guys. Nate Noel is somebody that a lot of people were very high on coming out of Appalachian State, and one of the most sought-after running backs in that that were available at the time in the transfer portal. So there's a lot, I think, to get excited about for the Missouri Tigers. I think we're kind of waiting to see on this defense, man. I think that's kind of where we're at. Let's see how the new defensive coordinator, Corey Batoon, handles a big-time role in a big-time college football team. You want to take us through the schedule? And before you do that real quick, I want to just tell everybody thank you again for watching the show today. If you all could, hit that like button. Help us out. We would be forever indebted to you. We love doing this. This is a lot of fun. It is a lot of work. And if you guys can give us a thumbs up and pass the good college football word on, help us by doing that, that would be much appreciated. We thank you all so much for watching and talking some college football with us here in March. This is proof that we got the best fans of any sport right here. Watching college football in March is where it's at. Y'all are some real ones. Mason, you want to take us through this schedule and let's kind of see what the schedule's looking like for the Tigers and this over under of 9.5 for this year. Very, very high.
Very high. I don't know that it's really been any higher for Mizzou since they entered the SEC, and that's saying something considering that they won the SEC East their first 2 years in the conference. But this is really high, and for good reason. Eli Drinkwitz had a great season last year, with Missouri, and I think that they didn't just kind of luck themselves through last year. I know the Kansas State game was really close, could have gone either way, but
That was crazy.
they seem to really be a good program. Similar to Ole Miss, where it didn't seem like smoke and mirrors or a fluke. I think that Mizzou is a pretty good football team. So going through the schedule, I think that they're easily going to win the first 4 games. And that includes an SEC game against Vanderbilt. I almost said Villanova, looking at the new logo, but Vanderbilt there. Villanova would be a tougher match, I think, actually for Mizzou. I don't even know if they have a football team. Yeah, so maybe their basketball team would play better than Vanderbilt out there.
They have an arena. They only have arena football at Villanova.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool. But so then you got Texas A&M. Now, I said in doing the Texas A&M schedule breakdown that this was a pivotal game for Texas A&M. The same is true for Missouri. This is going to be a really tough matchup for Missouri. It's a very talented program, even though they haven't won as much as Missouri. They are more talented on the field, and they're getting one heck of a good head coach in Mike Elko. So I think that Texas A&M is going to be a tough one. That's one that you circle right now, and you say, gosh, we got to get prepared for that game, because that's going to make or break, to me, their 10 wins this year. Another one that I look at, a couple weeks later is Auburn. Auburn's a team that is going to be better this year, folks. I'll go ahead and tell you, I don't know if they're good enough to beat Missouri next year, but they're going to be better, and they're going to make that a competitive game. I guarantee you that game's still being played in the fourth quarter, right? It's going to be a close game. They're lucky to get that one at home. They should win it. Then you've got Alabama on the road in, I guess it'll end up being like week 9, with the bye weeks and all that. Alabama's going to have some things figured out by then. They're still going to be a really good football team. Probably not as good as they were under Nick Saban in year 1, but I would still pick Alabama to win that game. I think that Missouri is going to have their hands full, but if they could get them in a year, this is the year to get them. Oklahoma, kind of similar, but in a different sense. I lean towards Mizzou, but Oklahoma could certainly end up winning this game. With Jackson Arnold, I think that's going to be, I think he's going to end up being a pretty good, like, top 5 quarterback in the SEC by the end of the year. So what can they do on defense for, Oklahoma, that is? What can they do on defense, and how does Missouri match up with them? It's going to be really pivotal in deciding that game. And then you go down the stretch and you got South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. I mean, they're going to be favored in all 3 of those games. So to me, I think that this Missouri team will take a little bit of a step back. I have their win total at about 9 games. So if I had to bet, I would choose the under. But look, this is a talented program. This is a really good team. They've got playmakers. Luther Burden is going to be given every opportunity to win the Heisman this year. I firmly believe that he is a playmaker that is capable of putting up those type of numbers as a receiver. And Brady Cook can distribute the football just as good as anybody. So I think that this is a team that could end up winning 11 games. But given the 9.5 point or 9.5 game win total, I'm going to take the under for this year. Somebody has got to go under on their over under, right, in the SEC. I think that this is a little bit of a regression year for Missouri, but 9 wins is still something to hang your hat on, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think the schedule looks a little bit easier than it did a few months ago, and the fact that we had all the changes that have went on at Alabama. So going on the road at Alabama, I don't think is as hard as it was. at one point, but most of the NFL talent that has left this team has left from the defense. You got Rakestraw there in the secondary. You had another cornerback left, a linebacker, a defensive lineman, and then a couple of offensive linemen head off to the draft. So the bulk of that NFL talent that left this team was on the defense, minus Cody Schrader. Um, so, excuse me. With that being said, you've got Texas A&M and Alabama installing new offenses. You got Auburn, who I think is going to be a run team more than anything. Although they do add some wide receiver talent, which was a big problem for them last year. Auburn was not able to throw the football at all, so I don't know that it was enough sample size last year to say they're just not going to try to throw the ball. I think they'll do that more successfully this year, but not exactly, a bomb you over the top style offense. Oklahoma is breaking in a new quarterback. Arkansas breaking in a new quarterback. South Carolina breaking in a new quarterback. So, I mean, if you really sit and think about it, I think that has a little bit to do with this 9.5. Which games on schedule do we feel like are just a for sure loss? I think maybe you could say an Alabama game. Okay.
I still don't. I don't even think that that's a for sure loss. I give Alabama, the edge in that. I think they have like a 65-70% chance of winning.
Yeah, I agree, and it's at Alabama. Otherwise, I think Missouri would have a better chance. But that's just one football game. So, I mean, you're having to try to come up with 3 losses on this schedule to hit the under, and I just don't fully see it right this second. I don't think South Carolina is going to be great. I don't think Arkansas is going to be great. We're going to have to see about Oklahoma. I think they're going to be pretty decent. I think that'll be a good ball game. Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Auburn, and Alabama. Those are the 4 games. If Missouri can win 2 of those 4 ball games,
True.
I think they hit the over.
Yeah.
And now, with all that being said, I don't think I'd bet this with your money. Okay, I think this is one that I'm not touching because I feel like Vegas is daring you to take the under here.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that's very much true. Is they're daring you to take the under, and with that schedule, it just seems like, it sets up well for a defense that is probably going to take a little bit to get their footing right. Not going to be as good of a defense for Missouri this year, I don't think. But I think that offense is ready to take another step up, even though you lose out on a guy like Cody Schrader, who led the SEC in rushing last year and had an amazing season. So with all that being said, I think that we're going to see more of the same as we did last year from Missouri. I think it'll be a little bit different looking team. But I think we're going to see more success for Eli Drinkowitz, and I think you're going to see those Missouri Tigers stand on business, as they like to say. Anything else on the Missouri Tigers before we close it out?
No, I think that's it. I think that's a pretty good breakdown on them. There are 6 games there, right, where I look at and I say you got to win 4 out of those 6 to hit the over, and they should be favored in most of those. So it's definitely possible. I'm not knocking the Tigers. I just think that I don't know that they are good enough to win all the games that they should win, right? And that's kind of my concern is they're not at the level of a Georgia or Ohio State or, I guess you could still say Alabama, but what Alabama has been, Oregon for the most part.
And what makes those teams so damn good is the fact that whenever somebody goes down, there's somebody behind them to step up. Missouri doesn't have that luxury. Missouri was a team last year, was probably one of the luckiest teams in the country as far as injuries goes. They did not have many injuries other than Ennis Rakestraw in that secondary last year. I mean, there was no injuries. Almost all starters started every single game. On offense, every starter started every game. How about that, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. I think Murphy's Law would tell you that they're due for some injury bug stuff, and hey, maybe it's just credit to the soft tissue program there at Missouri doing their thing. But at the same time, I would like it's just like a team that wins a bunch of close games one year. It's almost like clockwork. The very next year, they're going to lose several close games, right? It's just kind of how football works. It seems. We'll see. We don't ever want to see any injuries. I want Missouri to be as good as they can possibly be for the whole year. I hope everybody stays healthy. I don't think that's realistic, but a team that won 11 games last year, they were pretty lucky as far as injuries go, and if they can somehow manage this 2024 schedule without accruing a lot of injuries, I think that the first string for this Missouri team is really good, and it's going to be tough to take them out. And I could, if they stay healthy, I could definitely see a 10-2 season, regular season for the Missouri Tigers. And guess what? 10-2 would mean a trip to the college football playoff, which would be a massive coup for the Missouri Tigers and Eli Drinkowitz. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I thoroughly enjoyed the show tonight, and I'm so glad that all of you enjoyed it enough to come and hang out with us. Before you go, I hope you'll like the video and hit that subscribe button. We're going to be talking college football the rest of the offseason, every single week. Once the season gets a little closer, we'll start going to 2 or 3 shows a week, whatever we need to do to better serve our college football community and you guys. And we want you guys to come comment on the videos. Tell us where we're wrong. We say wrong stuff every week, and usually everybody's pretty good at pointing that out. But don't take it for granted. Point it out to us and drop us a comment. We love to hear from you guys. Very responsive in the comment section. But until next week, we're going to have to call it for today. We hope that you'll tune in throughout the week for clips and all that good stuff, and help us like all that content and help us push all that stuff out. You guys are the best. We appreciate you so much. And we will see you all next week. Signing out for the First and Long College Football Show, I'm Marcus. That's Mason. Everybody have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks. Y'all have a good night.